What is happening, people? Welcome back to the Scarfe Spurs Talk podcast. Since the last time I spoke to you, it's been two massive games for Spurs in two different competitions, and ultimately an awful week was last week, getting knocked out of both cup competitions. Two losses in the space of 4 days, increasing pressure on manager Ange Postecoglou, criticism of the players on the pitch, as well as the board and the hierarchy higher up. Stay tuned to the very end. There's a lot to get our teeth into that Liverpool defeat, Villa defeat, as well as looking ahead though to Manchester United, which is our next upcoming game. So let's go through and introduce tonight's panel because it is a special one. Alfie, welcome back. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Bit deflated after that week, double losses, but yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming back. As I said, circumstances not fantastic, so appreciate you coming on. Should still be a good one. Bob, welcome. Your debut on the podcast. How you doing?
Hey, Harry. So that's a tough one to say. How are you, Harry? All good. Yeah, no, look, could have been making my debut in a better week. Season's all but over, really. Bar one competition, and yeah, big week now to come against United. But look, we can take what we can from that.
Absolutely, massive week. Thank you for coming on again. Same to you. Apologies about the circumstances, but still great to have you on nonetheless. So thank you very much for joining us. Also, welcome to Luke Robinson, Aston Villa fan. I mean, I won't be apologising to you about bringing you on in these circumstances. Obviously, you've done a few bits before. How you been doing, mate?
Yeah, all good, mate. I was going to say I'm coming on better circumstances, but it's great to be back on your channel, mate.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. Thank you very much. You must be buzzing at the moment. We've also got a member of Change for Spurs on the podcast tonight. I'll introduce him just a little bit later when he sorts out his technical issue. But if you are new to the channel, please do like and subscribe. If you're listening on a podcast platform, don't forget to drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Shout out to our sponsor in the Kitman. But let's crack straight into it. I'm sorry for people in particular Spurs fans, to revisit this, but I do want to start by discussing that Liverpool defeat because last podcast was before that. Alfie, now the dust has kind of settled, what are your thoughts on the game? We all know how it went, losing 4-0 on the night, getting knocked out, because it wasn't a good night at all, was it?
No, yeah, and upon reflection, I think a few days after the game, you sort of do realise. I know they've lost to Plymouth now, but how good that Liverpool side was. So the context goes a little bit more into it, but it doesn't really account for still the lack of fight shown in the game. I think that's something that every Spurs fan's pretty annoyed about, and rightly so as well. It's a cup semi-final. It's not like we've had them absolutely showered of semi-finals and finals of the last 3-4 years. They don't come about very often for us. So to get that far and to be up in the first leg and then in the second leg to capitulate so easily and show so little fight, yeah, it's understandable that even now it does frustrate me a bit as well. Only compounded by the second loss of the week on Sunday as well.
100%. But yeah, this game wasn't good, as you said there. Bob, I'll bring you on this one. Did it feel like men versus boys in that game? Would you say, is that fair?
Yeah, they were all over us in minute one. I mean, I was chatting. I'm here in Ireland, so most of my friends are either Liverpool fans or Man United fans. So it was one I was having a chat with a few friends with before. I probably gave us a 1 in 3 chance of getting through. Before the game, I thought if we could just hang on in there to half time at 0-0, we had a chance to frustrate them, nick a goal as we've done before against them, and just kind of really frustrate the life out of them. But when we conceded kind of close to half time, you knew the inevitable was coming. I'm not sure about you guys, but I kept watching the 4-0, which I don't know what that says about me if I like the misery. But yeah, it was lack of fight more than anything. Look, we all know Liverpool are a really, really good team. They've stepped on since Slot has come in. They've got even better from last season. He has them playing some really good stuff. But it was the way we went about it. As showing no fight, not getting a foot in the game. Like as Roy Keane would say, not just going to kick a player. Like there was none of that. And I think that was the most frustrating part of it. Because that anyone could lose to a Liverpool team.
Absolutely, really frustrating. Thank you very much. I'd like to welcome onto the podcast Altu from Change for Tottenham. How you doing, my friend?
How you doing, Harry? Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on. I'm going to drop you straight into it.
Nice
And
one.
you about that Liverpool game, looking back on that one, because it was really tough. Would you think that performance was spineless from the players on the pitch?
Yeah, it was a mixture of things, wasn't it? Spineless always seems to crop up about us in kind of like semi-finals and finals, doesn't it? We don't ever seem to either get the rub of the green, or we just don't ever really seem up for it as well. I think rub of the green's probably the last of our issues actually against Liverpool, to be fair. Don't know why I said that, because that was like the least of our issues. But we just don't ever seem to get up for these games, do we? Like when you see Liverpool play, and it just seemed like it was never in doubt from the first 10 minutes. They were just all over us. And we didn't really seem to have any answers for them. I think partially what Ange said, of course, you do have to factor in the tiredness, of course, but we kind of tend to always rely on our senior players, and our senior players always seem to let us down. I know Sonny copped it quite a lot versus Liverpool, and deservedly so. But this has been happening since even when we had Harry Kane, as amazing as he was in the semi-finals, finals, he rarely did anything. And I feel like it's more of a cultural issue at Tottenham. We've just got this mental block that is just, I don't know what it is. I've got a good idea what it is personally. I've got my own sort of thoughts on that, but I'm sure we'll come to those. But yeah, it was. I think somebody encapsulated it really well on Twitter just before, in the lead up to the game. It was like Liverpool fans are probably just going about their day as though it's like any other day, and even the club as well, when they posted their sort of, this is our next match, it was just really casual, and it was like, yeah, up next we've got semi-final, League Cup, Spurs. Whereas for us, it was kind of like everything, wasn't it? Like most of us were probably counting down the hours, counting down the minutes, butterflies in our stomachs. Whereas with them, I think it was just any other game. And I don't know whether that's the experience, but it played out that way as well on the pitch, didn't it? We were a bunch of nerves. We were tired. Didn't even look up for it, to be honest. Which is a shame. Another season trophyless, unless we can do something special in the Europa, but that's going to take an almighty effort. And I don't really see it at the moment. But yeah, it wasn't a good night at all.
No, it wasn't. Thank you. And as you say, a real shame overall. I think you make some really good points. So, do appreciate that. Luke, as an Aston Villa fan, obviously a neutral in this situation, did you see the game? If so, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I did watch it because obviously I was watching it to see how you played, so then I could kind of picture what you were going to do against us. But I was quite surprised, to be honest, with just sort of how the game played out from a Spurs perspective. Really, it was just quite flat, and it didn't feel like I was watching a team that were, in a semi-final that were 1-0 up. I mean, Unai Emery, when I watch him and how tactically he can set up, and even if he was trying to defend a 1-0 goal, 1-0 lead, it would be, sort of like dogged, determined, fighting, grow into a game, try and start expressing yourself. But no, I was surprised that you just didn't really do anything. And I think, Angie's under a lot of pressure at the minute. But when I look at him as well, and, the way he's been talking previously about him being here to win trophies and, challenge at the top end of the league. And I looked at that performance and I thought, I didn't see anything from him that sort of set the tone for you guys. And it ended up being like nothing really. And you just sort of like went out of it on a bit of a whimper really. And yeah, so I think as a neutral, when you're looking for it to be like an exciting end-to-end game, it was just sort of like one-way traffic really.
Yeah, thank you, Luke. I think it's a good way of putting it. And we've heard lots of times already, men versus boys, one-way traffic. I think they all would be spot on. I just never thought we were in that game. Really frustrating. And then we move on to the second game of the week, Aston Villa So let's crack into that one. If people didn't see it, our lineup before the game was Kinski, Porro, Danso, Gray, Spence. That was the back line. Bergerval, Bentancur, Kulusevski in midfield, and Mortel and Son up front. Alfie, when you saw that team at the time, Sunday night, was there any surprise in there for you?
A little. I expected him to make some changes, but at the same time, his hands are a little bit tied. If you look at the bench, I think there was one or two senior players left. I think there was two senior players left, and both of which were Basuma and Sarr, who couldn't really give much more. They looked tired in midweek, and they were probably two of our worst performing players in midweek as well. So I understand dropping them. I would have liked to see Gray in midfield, but then again, the whole squad at the moment just looks so tired. And I'd say there's four players in particular: Kulusevski, Porro, Gray, and Son, who look like noticeably tired. And I haven't quite seen it in my last few years watching football. I don't think I've ever seen players quite look as tired as they do, and how it's impacting the performances so much, I believe. So when I saw the lineup, I was sort of pleased to see some changes, but I did know that it was going to take something pretty special to carry basically four players and then some who are all dead on their feet, really. So yeah, the start didn't help that. Obviously, within 54 seconds, I think it was, sort of set the tone, and only sort of confirmed my fears when I saw the lineup. But as I said at the start, he's not really got a plethora of options to choose from. His hands are a little bit tied.
Yeah, I feel that way too. Thank you, Alfie. Bob, anything you would have done different at the time? Obviously, as I always say, it is easy to say now, but when that lineup come out, was there anything you thought, oh, that's weird, or oh, I wouldn't have done that? You're on mute, Bob.
Perfect. Good start. I actually didn't mind the lineup when I saw it. I kind of liked Morgan in there from the start. I thought we were going to go Tell through the middle as opposed to out in the left. He probably would have been the last of the three I would have put out in the left. I'd have put more out in the left before him, our Sonny. For a player like Son, who's just shot in confidence, you don't want him playing through the middle, as we saw from the finish, kind of mid to late first half. We all know the one we're talking about. We were just so open, like that midfield. I thought by putting Kulusevski through the middle, it might bring a little bit more physicality, but obviously he's dead on his feet. Bergvall likes to get in and put himself about, but like I don't know where Bentancur was going for the first goal. He was like playing like furthest man forward the right side. We were just so open, and like if you look at this, like that chance that Villa had, Luke, I'm not sure who was it. Tielemans. Not soon after that, where he kind of ran through the middle of the pitch and he kind of slightly pulled it. Like that was the exact same as the Leicester goal, the Leicester second against us. And we're just so open in midfield. There was no outball. Like if your midfield's going to be open, at least they'll be getting forward and offering an outball. But they weren't there for defense, in the defensive setup. They weren't there when we were trying to play out. There was nothing going on. Archie Gray, as you said, it would be nice to see him in the middle of the park, but even if he were to, I think that would be the worst thing for him because he's shot energy-wise. What's the point of putting him in and being a lame duck?
Yeah.
Like, is there? I know we're coming on to United later, but just to segue slightly into that, is there, like, if we have a few players back, like let's say we have a Dogie, Odebear, Madison, I don't know, Ben Davies. I know he is back. Okay, but would there be anything to be said for taking like Porro, Kulusevski, Sam, and Gray out for the United game, given they're just absolutely dead? It could give them 2 weeks off to try to get their legs back. Ipswich is the following game, a relegation 6-pointer. But is there anything to be said for that? Because I actually think United are in a bigger mess than us at the moment, and we could probably still. I'd like to think we can still beat them with somewhat watered down. They're just a mess. We have injuries at least, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of where we kick on from there. But we just look too open. Kulusevski looks drunk. Like he literally looks like punch drunk the way he's running with the ball, runs the hose. The decision making's off. Passes are good behind players. It looks like me playing five-a-side after 5 minutes when my lungs have gone. Like they just look absolutely gone. So yeah, injuries are one thing, and then it's not going to affect not just not having them in your team, but playing 2 games a week for 2.5 months with the same 11 players, it's absolutely killed the rest of the team. So yeah, it'd be nice now to have a few weeks with no midweek games to try to get some level of energy back and players charged up a little bit. But yeah, I feel a sense of apathy almost at this stage of just, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's just, it is what it is. We'll see what happens. Yeah, kind of used to it, aren't we, at the moment, this form we're in. Thank you, Bob. Altu, I'll come to you next. What were your thoughts on the lineup when it come out? And do you agree with, like Alfie says, that, Ange's really limited resources, his hands are tied in terms of what he can pick at the moment?
Yeah, I think there is definitely credence in that. There's one argument to say if he used his squad better earlier in the season, he might have avoided it a little bit. But yeah, I quite liked the first 11, to be honest. I thought it was fairly strong, gave us a good chance against Villa. But yeah, again, I mean, this time I thought the performance was a little bit better than against Liverpool. I thought it looked a little bit, at least we looked like we had a little bit more energy. And I think that probably goes to show for the freshness of bringing Danso in, starting Tell, starting Moore as well. He hasn't had as many minutes as maybe some of the rest. So yeah, and again, I thought just that first minute or two, we were just totally undone, just being all out at sea. I think there's a screenshot of our midfield just before the goal happened, and it was like 5 or 6 midfielders just literally congregating around it. I don't know which Villa player it was, but the one who I think made like the pre-assist, if you want to call it that. And then there was just nobody left around him. And then obviously the Kinski clangor as well, which just kind of is Spurs all over at the moment, isn't it? And then it was a long way back from there, because after that, I think Villa had their tails up. They were chasing everything down. We had our moments, like the Son chance, obviously, totally really not like him to finish easy chances like that. Normally he's finishing like ridiculous. Sonny we know is finishing ridiculously hard chances, and he can't even put away a tap in at the moment, which just kind of shows what he's about at the minute. So yeah, it was tough. But then the second half, I think we did start playing a little bit better, and then I think the quality showed off of Villa's bench as well. Villa brought on Asensio, Rashford, and they looked like they kind of almost went up another gear. At least in control, they had a lot more control. Stuck the second goal in, and then I think kind of sat back, and we obviously started pressing them and Tell with a really nice tidy finish. But yeah, in terms of Ange's hands being tired, I think they are, but I think he can also shoulder a little bit of responsibility for that. I don't think he's rotated as well as he could have. I know Spence was out for ages for whatever reason, and when he finally got his chance because of our injury crisis, he's been our best player by almost Kulusevski until he was sort of fatigued to bits. Spence has been our best player in that period. So yeah, I think his hands are tired, but I think he's also had a little bit of a hand to play in it as well. If I'm playing devil's advocate.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Harry,
Put out there.
Could I just mention something on that as well? Sorry for putting in, but
of course,
we are blaming players for being tired, and Grant 100%, and his hands are tied on that. At 59 seconds into a game, you shouldn't be tired no matter what your level of fitness is.
No.
And like Kinski makes a mistake. I kind of think he thinks it's going across him. I think he thinks he's going to cross the goal. I think he makes a decision early to dive left. It goes kind of more central than he thinks, and he can't get back for it after making the decision. And Grant, and look, to be honest with you, he made enough saves for me to say, do you know what? that's grand. Keepers make mistakes. He made more good saves than mistakes. Okay, so he's a young keeper. I think he's getting a bit of flack at the moment, which I think is so reactionary from our fans, because he has his debut. All of our fans are, he'll dislodge the carry. He makes a couple of mistakes. Even like the commentary team against Arsenal were going at him for being slightly loose with the ball at his feet when he didn't actually only make a real mistake other than the shot. Fair enough, shot stopping against Arsenal, he could have done better against Trossard. But I'm digressing a bit, but like 59 seconds into a game, he shouldn't be like I think these are more mental slips of switching off. How many goals have we conceded 5 minutes either side of half time? I've said it all season. We're conceding goals non-stop 5 minutes before. Like Leicester, we were 1-0 up. We conceded 2 goals within 6 minutes. Arsenal, I'm pretty sure we conceded pretty close to half time. We can't just keep it tight when we need to keep it tight. Like, if anything, it's slightly easier to keep it tight than play this expansive football, in my ignorant opinion, of somebody who's never played professional football, albeit. But like, you can sit in deep for 5 minutes. Like, again, up to that Liverpool game last week we were talking about, we weren't far off half time. We were frustrating them. You could tell they were getting frustrated. Get them into the second half and they start snatching at chances. Too many times we have these mental lapses this season. And to be honest, since really that Chelsea game last season, that yes, we can blame physicality for losing games, grand, fair enough. But there's too many individuals and mistakes happening. And I don't know. Look, obviously physicality comes into mental decisions, grand, but not 59 seconds into a game, not when you're 3 minutes from half time and it's like that final stretch for a run when you know your lungs have gone, but you keep pushing it. There's too much of that switching off in our team, and I don't think it's down to physicality.
No, it's a good point you make. And someone in the YouTube chat backs you up in Pipe71, who says, if you tell players 24/7 that they're tired, guess what? They will play tired. This manager is a snake oil salesman, he says. It's the injuries, they're tired. Playing Thursday to Sunday, he's the excuse king. That's interesting. But on to the game and the action itself. Luca, kick it off with you. It was 54, 56 seconds that you opened the scoring through Jacob Ramsey. I mean, that's a perfect start from a Villa point of view, isn't it? At home as well, to entice the crowd.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that move that we did for that goal's pretty textbook Emery of what we've been doing this season. We want to play through the middle of teams on transition, 1-2 passes. Rodgers is away, running into green grass. So, yeah, it was quite surprising that it happened so early, really. It's something that we constantly trying to get into that position because it's something that Rodgers really excels in, and sort of skips past Bergvall and then he's sort of like free, and Marlon makes a good run and drags Danso out the way and finds Ramsey. And yeah, it's just a good start. I mean, going into the game though, it was quite, I don't know, a bit not nervy for Villa fans, but we'd been on the back of 2 batterings against Postecoglou, really. Beat us at Villa Park, beat us at your place early on this season. So I think there was just that bit of added intensity from Villa that we had to start fast and try and, really take the game to you. And I think the fact that we got sort of Marlon making his home debut, young right back making his, and then we got Asensio and Rashford, 2 brand new signings. There was quite a buzz about the place, really. So yeah, I thought we were pretty good, really. I thought we were pretty much in control from large parts. I think you came out in the second half and you were pretty decent. But and I do think Tell looks quite lively. I think he looked quite lively at Anfield. And I think the one thing that I spotted going back to the game at Anfield was he was the one that was sort of trying to lead the press at times and sort of telling players to press. And that's something I noticed. And he was kind of doing it again at Villa Park, really. So I think he's going to be a really good player for you. Someone that I've spotted. I thought he's pressing and his movement was quite good and his finish was really good. So yeah, I think it was a good game. I think touching on sort of like tiredness, I think we've had a bit of that, and it's not an excuse, but I just think it is what it is. I mean, after Champions League games, we've only won 1 game after a Champions League game, and we've played 8 Champions League games and won 1 out of that 8. And I think it is difficult sort of playing in that sort of like Wednesday and then a game at the weekend. I think it doesn't matter who it is. I think it does tend to sort of like take it out of teams. And I think you have got a lot of injuries as well. But I think sometimes you kind of want your senior players to probably just step up a little bit more and try and show a bit more. But yeah, so I thought we were pretty good, to be fair.
Yeah, I thought you were totally dominant, but thank you very much for that. Alfie, I'll come back to you on that Villa first goal. It was an awful start for Spurs, wasn't it? And we mentioned Kinski. He has to do better for this goal, doesn't he? Really?
Yeah. Obviously, he does. Goes without saying. But I think Bob touched on it there that he made enough saves to sort of even it out later in the game. I have a lot of sympathy for him, as I do with a lot of the younger players who actually I think have been our standout performers, not only on the pitch but also in the other aspects in leadership, which is exciting for them and for the future. But it's really concerning, as Luke said, for the current here and now, who aren't showing enough leadership by far. Kinski's been thrown into the Spurs setup literally a month ago, and everyone was saying, as you said, Bob, he's the best thing that's ever happened to us. Who's this kid we've signed? This is amazing. And then we're having accounts tweet out about him saying he's awful, and people are getting on his back straight away. I think it's a bit harsh, and I have a bit of sympathy for him there. Obviously, you should save it, as I said, but I think him and the other players have done enough, and they've got enough credit in the bank that the focus should be more towards senior players. What's the likes of Basuma and contributing to this? What's the likes of Bentancur contributing to a semi-final? Apparently, he walked down the tunnel and didn't even clap the fans. I mean, that's the bare minimum for a leader in the group. He's a 28-year-old. If he looks around him, he's got Bergvall is 20. Bergvall is 19. Kinski in goal is 21. Danzo's just signed, and he's playing with basically a youth team with a few senior players dotted in. It's almost getting embarrassing now that the youth players are constantly, routinely showing up the senior ones, and that's why I have sympathy for Kinski's error at the start. I mean, it's not the ideal start by far, but to even switch off that early and let them get to that position in the first 54 seconds shouldn't be happening no matter what. As we've all said, we're not the fittest at the moment. We haven't got loads in the tank. Surely you just shore up the first 5 minutes at least. You'd sort of make sure the senior players, if the manager's not doing it, which I'm not sure he's going to be saying, "Oh, take your time at the start, lads." But the senior players alone should be saying, "Let's pack it in. Let's make sure we start fast." Is Son not saying that? Is Bentancur not doing that? Is any of these senior players not telling them, right, keep your heads early on? And Kinski looked deflated as soon as he let it in. He knew he made the mistake. I didn't see anyone go and pick him up and make sure he was all right. I didn't see anyone rally behind him. He had to do it himself, and credit to him that he did. But yeah, it's sadly just the case, and at the moment it's the youth players we're having to look upon, and youth players make mistakes, and that's what happened to Kinski. So I have some sympathy for him, and I think he made up for it in the match in the whole, really.
But where are our senior players? Like there was a day, and it's this is all very good. We all do it all back in my day. Players of this or that. Like players 10 years ago would have done whatever they could to get fit for a cup semi-final. Like players like Maddison, apparently 7 days away. That was 6 days before. And said Maddison, Udogie, and a few others were 6 days away from returning. Like if I was them, and 10 years ago I said players would have done whatever they could to get fit to play a semi-final. Cup semi-final is a big deal. He should want to play it. And I know he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, because people will say, "Oh, you rush players back too early," like say with Van de Ven. But I don't think these injuries. I think there could be an element of down and tools from a few players, which does worry me. Players like Romero, here's a guarantee for you: if he's as close as he is to fitness or as far away as he is at the moment, we don't know. And there's a big Copa America game. Does Romero play it? 100%. He makes himself fit for it. Luke, growing up, one of my heroes was Paul McGrath. He played one knee. He was worse than Levy King for his injuries with his knee. And he'd had a few drinks as well. He played whenever he could. Players now, "Oh, little nigga, no, I'm not playing." And I know, after you touched on at the start, that there's a culture in a club. I don't know, look, I'm not a fan of Daniel Levy, but I don't know if the culture comes from him. I don't. We can, I don't know how much Danny Levy's involved in the change room. I know he was in the past. You probably know more than I do on this, but like, how does a culture come down from a chairman? And we can hide behind that and we can blame that grand. And I completely agree. I don't want them near our club. Okay. But players have to be handled for stepping up, for creating a culture. This has happened for the last 10 years. And personally, I don't think, like, the players who've been there for the last 10 years are Son and Ben Davies. I don't think they have a bad culture. Like, and I know I'm kind of talking myself around in circles here, and I don't really know what my point is but where are these senior players stepping up, wanting to play, wanting to fight back, wanting to come back from injury, play through injury, get an injection and play through? Like, maybe I'm old school. I don't know, but like, these players should want to be playing a cup semi-final. Should want to be playing a cup fourth round when the draw is open. It's an open draw now, and we're not in it.
I think it has to come from Daniel Levy. He's the leader, right? He's the leader of the organisation. He sets the goals. What do you think Daniel Levy's goals are? Do you think he's desperate to win a trophy? Do you think there's repercussions for not winning a trophy? I don't think there ever has been at Spurs. I think if you've managed to, and I'm not saying players shouldn't then take it upon themselves to say, no, we won a trophy. Like, obviously it has to be on them, but you see the cultural changes in other clubs. Luke's Villa being a great example. They're in the Championship when we were playing our Champions League final. They've changed owners and look at them now. They're absolutely flying. I mean, we didn't sign a player the caliber of Marco Asensio in probably 10 years we were good. Do you know what I mean? Like, since we were in the Champions League, and that was one of the excuses. It was like, get in the Champions League, sign these great players, get in the stadium, sign these great players. And that's part of the culture as well, I think. And I think players can sense that. Like, do we have a leader in the squad? I don't think we do. I know Sonny's the captain. Do we really have that Roy Keane type leader? I don't think we do. Look at our transfer policy this summer. It was, don't get me wrong, I don't want to say it was bad, because the players we actually got were quite good. We got Bergvall, Gray, but there's no balance there. We needed more on the pitch for them now. We needed
experience.
We needed experience. We needed leaders to kind of to drag these players through those moments. Like, it looks a little bit ragtag to me at the moment. And yeah, I mean, in any organization, the culture is set from the top, the very top, and then it rolls down. So for me, I think it can only be Daniel Levy who can change that culture. And for me, that starts by changing the transfer policy. We've got the lowest revenue to wages ratio, and we seem to take pride in that because we're the champions of that every single season, or at least we make top three, so or bottom three, should I say. So it's things like that. Like, there's a reason for me that Man United, even when they're crap, they still nab the odd trophy, because they're bringing in these players who have been there and done it. They're on high wages because they've been there and done it, right? So they can be crap for weeks on end, but when it comes crunch time, they can put in a performance. They've been there. They're not going to get overawed by the occasion.
They turn up for big games as well. And
yeah,
we
they
talk
turn
about
up
the
for big
mentality
games.
and culture thing. We don't, do we?
Yeah, we just don't. And for me, I think until Daniel Levy changes that transfer policy, makes the biggest goal to win trophies instead of top four. And I mean with his actions, not with his words, because he says he so desperately wants success, but the financials are there for the public to see. Like, we know you're not doing everything you can to be successful. We've seen the direct correlation there is with wages and the amount of trophies that clubs win, and we're never anywhere close to that in terms of like percentages, in terms of absolute amounts. So yeah, he can say he wants to win, but yeah, and I think that culture just filters through. It really does.
And look, I completely agree with you on it. I'm not defending them at all. Like, I agree with you on our transfer policy. There's no balance to it. It's one thing or the other. We're buying players who are past their sell by, or haven't got to their sell by date, or haven't got close to it yet. Like, I completely get that. I just feel players do hide behind that. And yeah, you're right. Look, we've all worked. Like, I work in jobs. I've worked in jobs for 20 years in the workplace. I know if from the top you can get away with a subpar performance. You probably are. Like, it's only human nature. So I do get that. I just wonder, how do we change that in the here and now? Like, Daniel Levy isn't going anywhere. I don't think he's going anywhere while the money's still coming in. It's cash cow for him and Joe Lewis. Like, so, and even if he was to, how long does it take to sell a football club? It takes, it's not an overnight thing. So how can we change that in the here and now? Is it just like Daniel Levy sorts it out? Like, change for Tottenham, okay, I'm behind what you do. I said I do want to emphasize that. I'm just partly playing devil's advocate on this here as well. If Daniel Levy sorts it out, whether we're Levy out, Enoch out, Ange out, like, let's sort it out, okay? If Daniel Levy sorts it out, are you happy for Daniel Levy to stay at the club?
Harry, do you want to get into this now, or did you have more football to?
Yeah, do you mind if we come back to it? If we go through the Villa game, and then I plan as like a
Sorry,
little
Harry,
segment
sorry,
on the. No, yeah, you're absolutely
it's
fine.
cool.
No,
Yeah.
you're asking all the right and important questions. But if we get through the Villa stuff, and then we go through Ange and the ownership, is that all right with everyone?
Spot on.
I'm keen to get into it as well. But yeah, we'll try and whiz through this. Thank you. Luke, on that first half where you went into it with a 1-0 lead, what were your thoughts there? You mentioned how you thought you'd done over the course of the 90, but I thought in particular in that first half, you're really good. You should have been more than 1-0 up, shouldn't you, really?
Yeah, I thought it's a bit of a tale of our season, really. We have a lot of chances, sometimes don't take them, and then we sort of get hurt by teams just coming back into games. But I just felt like I just felt like we were on it, and everything looks like it was coming together. Just how we was just sort of like retaining possession, churning it back, and we'd got sort of like a real big out ball, which was Luca Dean, and how we play is that we like our left back Luca Dean to offer the width on the left hand side, and I just felt because Spurs were so narrow, he was sort of our out ball all of the time on the left side, and that just gave me like with confidence that sort of like tactically we'd sort of got that out ball in us, and then I just felt like going into the second half, I just wanted to see more of the same, really. I thought, Ramsey was playing well, Rodgers was playing well, Marlon was leading the line well, Bailey was having a good game for a performance that he's not been doing that great this season. So I just felt like everything was sort of clicking, and we were just hopefully we were going to sort of carry on what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I thought you were really good even in that second half. I still thought you kept going and done very well. Definitely deserved that victory in the end. Alfie, we saw a half-time substitution. Basuma coming on for Mikey Moore. I mean, something had to change, didn't it? I mean, we were so poor in that first half, and the midfield balance was wrong. Was that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, the midfield's been a glaringly obvious area of improvement for not only this week, I think, but I think it's sort of been since the start of the season. And in the summer, when I looked at the team and thought, right, where can we improve? I circled midfield. I put DM as the position we need to improve. So I'm surprised. I know Gray can play there, but clearly he was bought as a utility player that can play right back as well. So I'm surprised we didn't go out and replace. So I mean, I'm not sure we've even replaced Højbjerg, and I wasn't Højbjerg's biggest fan, by any stretch of the imagination at all. And I think the window in the summer was, as Altu said, I think it was good in the terms of the buys have all turned out quite well, but was it enough, and was it enough experience and quality currently to add to the team? I don't think it was, and that's why the midfield got overran, and that's why I think Ange's struggling with it. I think I'm not sure he knows what his best midfield is. I'm not sure what he knows the dynamic to play is. We've seen it since the start of the season. He experimented that. There's a period that I remember very vividly at the start of the season where we had Kulusevski and Madison both playing in the midfield, and everyone was like, "This is great." It worked for one game, then it didn't work, then it did, and he was experimenting with it too much, and I think he wasn't sure what to do. And I don't think he's ever been sure since, and partly because the team's been injury stricken, that it's been in and out, that he hasn't really been able to settle in midfield. But he's used Sarr as a player to sort of cover up the legs, and I just don't think he knows the dynamic. So I wasn't surprised to see another midfielder come on. but it's a shame again that Kulusevski's been put out wide. I wouldn't have actually minded seeing the midfield almost packed out. I think Mourinho did that and Conte did that towards the end of their tenures when they were getting a bit like, right, we need to start with the basics here, and they packed out the midfield. So when I saw the substitution, I thought perhaps it was going to be a diamond and he'd put Kulusevski through the middle and then he could put Son and Tel up front, because to me that was the only logical reason you'd keep Son on the pitch, which is why it was a bit deflating to see that it was Moore coming off and then putting Kulusevski back out on the right. I mean, I think Moore's been a bright spark in the last few months. It's coming back from his illness, whatever it was he had that kept him out. So yeah, I wasn't surprised to see a midfielder brought on. But I was surprised to see the shape didn't change, and I was very surprised to see that Son wasn't brought off, because not only does he need a rest, but at the moment he'll be more than aware of it. He's always very open as his performances. They've been nowhere near the levels at all. We're seeing not even half the player that he used to be. He's known for his finishing and even his sharpness and quickness as a player, and we haven't seen any of that apart from a first half against Elfsborg 2 weeks ago this season, really. So I was surprised to see the song not come off, but I wasn't surprised to see an extra midfielder on. It's just a shame what shape we kept, really.
Thank you, Alfie. Altu, I think Alfie makes a good point there about Son. Were you surprised to see Moore being the one make way once again rather than Son?
Yeah, in the context of the Villa match, I'm probably going to annoy every single Spurs fan in the world here, but I think we need to go a bit easy on Moore. I don't think he's ready for Premier League football just yet. I think he gets eaten up by more athletic players. I think he's a very, very tidy player. Very, 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 very tidy. Technically very good. But I think we're heaping a hell of a lot of pressure on the boy, and I don't think that's fair on him in our desperation to kind of find the next academy whiz kid. I think he's got a lot of growing to do in terms of stature and in terms of athleticism, and he's still only 17, isn't he? So I think he's got a lot of room and time to do that. I wouldn't want him thrown to the Sharks on a regular basis in the Premier League. I didn't think he looked great against Palace, but the whole squad, the whole team didn't look great against Palace. So that's not a slight on him. I just think it's a different kind of level. He looks great. He looked good against Elfsborg. But yeah, I don't think we should overhype him just yet for his own benefit. I think he's got all the tools to be good. I think he needs to just grow, literally. I think when you can tell he's playing against men sometimes, but all the technical ability is there. Like some of the balls he puts in, he's created, I think it's like 3 big chances since he started. So all of that is there. But yeah, I think I'd prefer to go a little bit easier with Moore and ease him in rather than just throw him to the Lions and he's the next best thing. And then everyone ends up shitting on him in the end because he doesn't quite meet the lofty expectations of everybody. So but yeah, I mean, there's reason for excitement for sure. I just think Twitter goes a little bit crazy as Twitter does.
Of course,
with everything's quite extreme, isn't it? But
one end to the other.
Yeah, exactly. He's a great prospect, and the other 2 lads looks great as well. Ajayi, I know he only had about 4 minutes, but what a 4 minutes. Sorry, no, it's 4 minutes before he scored, wasn't it? But yeah, he had a great little cameo. And the other lad as well in the game previous, I forget his name now, but he looks pretty lively as well. So yeah, I mean, we're certainly looking good for the future. So I made the joke that we're going to be amazing when we're all dead. So at least if you're my age, I'm 40. You boys will probably see it.
Well, that's the thing. If we can keep hold of these players, because all jokes aside, the way we're playing at the moment, I think the way we're run is that quite easily, you just start saying, do these players want to be at Tottenham? As I say, we'll get onto it later, but even with like managers and that, I mean, I don't think it's a given that they're going to, drop everything for Spurs mid-season. I think that's where we're at right now, and it's similar for Man United as well. I don't think it's just Spurs, but we'll move on for now to that Villa second goal scored by Morgan Rogers. Luke, would you say this is a really important time? It's the 64th minute of the game it was that you got that second goal, because the first time in the game I thought we were starting to cause you a few problems, and you got that counter attack, you broke away, and he's a little bit scrappy, but it doesn't matter, does it? Went in the back of the net, 2-0 up.
Yeah, we'd had sort of like a chance with Ramsey before that as well, where it was a good save from McKinsky. And I think at that moment we'd got Rashford and Asensio queuing up to come on. So it felt like Emery wanted to sort of get a hold of that little bit of a period where you were sort of, getting on top of us. And then we sort of scored at the right moment. And then he brings Rashford and Asensio on. And then Asensio, I think his second touch was like a Zidane pirouette, and then he's just finding space. And I thought Asensio, he was from a Villa point of view, it was like a really good cameo, and the link up with him and Rodgers. And I think Rashford looked lively. Rashford was pressing, he was running, and so I think again it was pleasing to see that. He was doing everything you'd want from a footballer, but if you're Man United fans, that's everything that he hasn't been doing. So, that was pleasing. And it was quite a good goal. I thought Bailey sort of bided his time. There was little overlap from Marlon, fired it across, and Rodgers stuck it away. And I think them are the goals that I think are underrated, the tap-ins really. But I think if you can bag 5 or 6 tap-ins a season, and then score some other good goals, then your numbers start going up, don't they? So he was ready to pounce, and it was a buzzing that we were 2-0 up, and then I felt like we were going to just go on to win the game from that point.
Yeah, it's fair to say a goal's important, and it felt like a good time, as you say, to introduce the 2 new signings, Rashford and Asensio. So I think Emery got that spot on, maybe a little bit luck, I don't know, but it all panned out quite perfectly for you, and was a good night overall. A little bit nervy towards the end that your performance didn't deserve, but you got the win. That's all that matters in the end. Bob, I'll come to you. From a Spurs point of view, it was poor, wasn't it? A goal to concede. I thought that the midfield was quite open for this goal. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it was a scrappy one. Well, it turned out to be a scrappy one, but Villa played some good stuff to get it forward. And it was kind of frustrating because I thought we were kind of playing our way back into it at that point of the game, and that if there was to be a way back in, it was then. And then when that second went in, it was all but over. I mean, Luke, do you mind me asking, am I just being a biased Spurs fan and thinking we were kind of starting to get a foothold in the game, or did you feel that we were pressing to get a chance?
Yeah, no, I thought you were. Yeah, you had more of the ball, didn't you? It felt like the manager had a bit of a word, and it got a little bit more serious from a Spurs point of view. You're starting to run a bit harder, press a bit more, and it felt like it was sort of starting to come together a little bit more for you. But then I think we was always a threat on sort of like transition as well. So I think it was one of them where it felt like if you were going to score, that was like a good moment for you to score, because you sort of just get that little bit of added motivation, and then you get that more belief, don't you? And to be fair, there was a lot of Spurs fans there. They had the whole of like the upper north stand, and then they had the normal away allocation. So it was starting to get a little bit loud at that point as well. I mean, they were still singing that sort of Levy chant. So that was quite loud. I'm in the whole tent, so I was sort of like opposite where they all were, but you could hear that quite a lot during the game. So I think you're right. I think that period was when you were starting to get on top.
Yeah, it felt frustrating because I felt we hadn't have scored then, we could have gone on to kind of sucker punch a win out of it. So it really was like a punch in the stomach for me watching it anyway. But it was like, I thought that period from halftime to there, we did start to find a way back in. I thought Bassoon was okay when he came on from a kind of more pressing point of view. He was pressing aggressively, he was getting forward, there was a little bit more structure to our play. And I completely agree with Altu about Mikey Moore. I think playing in games like Elfsborg, where he can build that confidence, he has a little bit more time, the ball, players aren't quite as physical, as opposed to playing him out on the right side, which is his weaker side, against Luca Digne, who's big quality for Villa. So I agree with you there on that. I think we should be easing him in and not putting too much pressure on him, especially when you see players like Jamie Donnelly on the weekends and consistently.
What a goal, by the way.
What a guy. And I'm not
Oh.
taking that one off him. I'm giving him that one. But, when you see players like that out in loan, you think, do you know what? You could have got some good game time for us. He's a bit more physical. He probably has a little bit more to him development-wise. But technically, he's not a bad player. I don't think he's as technically good as more pound for pounder year for year in this stage. But yeah, I would be kind of easing the pressure on more a bit. Look, we all love to see him get on the ball, and he's not blindly quick, but reminds me a little bit, actually, Luke, of kind of a Jack Grealish. He kind of can glide past a player. He has that kind of the sock of his ankles, big calves. He can kind of nut a player, get around them, and before you know it, he's kind of muscled his way through kind of a few players. But he doesn't have that blind in place, I don't think, to really. You see young players, and that's the big advantage they have over kind of an aging centre half or aging kind of right, left full. And he doesn't have that. He kind of plays beyond his years, with still being a 17-year-old, if that's the way to put it. But look, it's part of football to get excited about these young players that come through as well. So you just have to temper it.
I think with him, you kind of want him to be able to play a little bit more freely, but I think because you are sort of struggling a little bit, you're ending up sort of like relying on him, and I think for his age and just the way he's developing, I think you don't, like what you're all saying, you don't really want to have to rely on him. You want to, it's sort of like ease him in cameos and just allow him to get more confidence. But I think you go through a lot of your team, like Gray, out of position, relying on him quite a lot. Bergval, relying on him, so the keeper, relying on him. So I just think if like what I said earlier, if the senior pros were like stepping up a bit more, it would ease the pressure on someone like Moore. So yeah, that's what I think. But I think he's a quality player, and he's going to have a massive future in the game.
I think if you're playing with freedom, that's why I think he has to be on the left side, because if you're right footer playing on the left side, you get into the pockets of space, and I think it's easier to play with freedom. Whereas if you're right footer playing the right side, you have to keep the width, you have to whip balls in, you have to try to beat a player on the outside, and I don't think that's his game if you're trying to let him play with freedom.
No, I completely agree with you, but I think we all know that that front three, for example, against Villa, and just generally at the moment, it's been altered around Son. Whereas, no disrespect, but based on his performances, I think he should be. And Moore, I think you get the best of him. I think we've seen that. Yeah, that game in Europe, I can't remember. I think who it was, but it's a prime example of that. Playing on the left, so much better than on the right. And Son hasn't been great recently, so I think it's time to say, look, Moore, you're better in this position. Sorry, Son, but you're not being good in either position. So I felt like Moore and Tell, they were just kind of shifted and not prioritized, if you like. I think it's the right word here against Villa. Maybe we need to look at that, and Angie to look at that a different point of view. Just an idea to put out there, but we'll have to see what happens. But Altu, on a positive note, consolation goal for us coming in the 91st minute through new signing Matthias Tell. You happy for him, to get his first Spurs goal, and he's shown I think quite real passion, desire, and a glimpse of quality as well since joining. Is he potentially a positive to look forward to, despite all our doom and gloom at the moment?
Yeah, of course. It's early days. He had a little cameo against Liverpool, he had a half, didn't he, against Liverpool, and then a pretty positive game against Villa, as much as you can say it was positive, even though we weren't that great. But yeah, I think you see the Bayern kind of mentality come with him, right? Like even when he was playing versus Liverpool, and he almost looked a bit surprised that he had to tell our other senior players. Well, I say other senior players. He's a teen. He's telling our senior players, like Luke said, he was telling them, like, what's going on? Like, it's time to press. Like, why aren't you pressing? Kind of thing. So I think I know he's young, he's 19, but I think that Bayern experience, being in and around so many winners, so many great characters, I think will only help him on top of the obvious bits of quality that we've seen. But again, it's early days, but he took his goal superbly. I thought that was a fantastic finish. like, you know, really deft touch into the corner on the volley was superb. I'd like to see him, like you said, as the number 9. I think it kills two birds with one stone. You give Sonny a rest. You can bring more in on the left if you want. Kulu on the right, although I'm with you as well. I quite like him in the middle as well. He had quite a good thing going there as a number 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think this is one of the things the injury crisis has done, is kind of make us put what's it called? Square pegs in round holes. That's the word I was looking for. So every game we're almost putting square pegs in round holes. But yeah, sorry, back to Tell. Yeah, I'm excited for him in the 1.5 games I've seen. Looking forward to seeing more of him, and hopefully we can see more of that quality. I'd like to see him down the middle though, see what he can do while Solanke's out.
I agree with you. However, we can get the best out of him. Definitely, I think it's been good. Thank you very much for that, Alfie. It was a nice cross from Kulusevski, wasn't it? You know, should we put more balls in the box? I don't think we've done that enough. We didn't often get in those positions, but we did. It just didn't really come to anything. There wasn't those balls in the box. And Cooley, we know he's capable of it. Should it have happened a little bit more? No, you haven't got necessarily that physical presence in the box. I don't really count Son as a striker. Tell obviously in a striker position for this goal, I think took initiative, but no Solanke or Richarlison maybe does impact that.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of desperation. I think it's quite a sign when we start doing them crosses, or Kulusevski is the reason I like him so much in the middle is because I think on the right he's very predictable. So I've seen that cross from Kulusevski probably about 5 times each game this season. He does that sort of cut in or shoot or cross on that left foot on the edge of the box every single time. But toward the end of the games, you can't really complain about it because they are effective and they do cause havoc. Especially when Harry Kane was obviously at the club, he had that great heading prowess, and the amount of goals and chances we create just from that sort of cross was great. And yeah, perhaps he should be given the ability to shift out on the right later in games when teams are a bit tired and they're going into their low blocks, and that can be our way to disrupt low blocks. But I think against Leicester, there's a stat that we had the most crosses in a Premier League match there's ever been in this season. Sorry, and just the way we were forced out wide, and I think it is something we struggle with. And Kulusevski is the best crosser, well, perhaps barring Brennan Johnson, who isn't everyone's cup of tea, but he plays a very specific role and he plays it very effectively. And perhaps we miss him a little bit. He has that a bit like Kulusevski. He's very predictable on the right, but he's effective, and he has that thing where he goes out wide and he drills that cross in low. The amount of goals that we scored from that last season, he got 10 assists, but a lot of them chances we had last season were created from him drilling it in as well. So he had 10 assists, and then so many chances that he created as well from the same action again and again. And I think we missed that a bit. But in terms of Tell, I was impressed. I think there's a lot to look into about Ange's way that he spoke about Tell when we signed him. He was sort of sympathetic about the whole rejection or initial rejection about him not joining, and then he basically just said, "Yeah, we're signing him," which took me back a little bit because we all know it's been confirmed we're not definitely signing him, because we can not do that, and that obviously there's a discrepancy whether he has to agree to that deal being signed or not. Regardless of that, the manager coming out and saying we're signing a player that's got an option to buy and it's £60 million is a big statement, because he might not be that great. So it showed as soon as he said that, I thought Tell must be an incredible talent, because he's had 2 training sessions with Ange Postecoglou and he's saying we're signing him. So you have to be something pretty special to have that instant backing from your manager. So yeah, it's good to get his goal off his back as well. He's got that ticked off now. So as we've all said, I think it'd be good to see him through the middle or even on the left instead of Son going forward against Man United. I'd love to see him score against Man United, especially the whole storyline that will go with that game, definitely in the media. So yeah, it's good that he ticked that off. And I think maybe even if we have Johnson, we'd have even more chances to give to Tell if he was through the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. We need those attacking players back for his sake as well. I mean, even just a competition for minutes, and that's the thing. You know, with so many players, I feel like we're just overplaying them as well at the moment, and we'll get into that a little bit later on why that is, who's at fault. But even like Satel to come in and no minutes for us to play in 90 minutes every week. If players don't come back quickly, it's a lot to expect of a new signing to gel, to understand. You want them to be introduced gradually. So I think Alfie, you make a good point. So yeah, thank you for that. Luke, from a Villa point of view, is it frustrating? And obviously, it doesn't matter in terms of the result or going through. Is it frustrating to concede so late and have that nervy ending, which was unnecessary considering the way you played and totally dictated and dominated the game?
Yeah, it's like classic football, isn't it? Like you've had loads of chances and then you don't take them and then you get punished at the end. But yeah, I mean, we rarely keep clean sheets, so conceding's pretty much a given every game that we play. And then, just as you get towards the end, you're thinking, not extra time, because then you'll be there for another half hour. And I was just glad that we just sort of kept you at bay. Really, we didn't really allow another big chance, which was pleasing to see. And like I said earlier, it was a really good finish. It's sort of outside of the foot, and great finish from him. But yeah, just buzzing that we sort of managed to hang on in the end.
Yeah, ultimately, that's all that matters. The performance doesn't matter. But I think that's what fans are saying. Just get the result. And Spurs at the moment aren't getting the performances like before, and certainly aren't getting the results either. That's the frustrating thing at the moment. But Luke, before I let you go, where do you stand as as an outsider with Spurs at the moment, and just Postecoglou as well? Do you think that we should be giving him time?
It's a tough one. I think from a proper outsider, I think my opinion on what's happened is that when you went on that massive run at the very start of his sort of tenure, it blindsided a lot. It was like, oh my God, he's like the next coming of, Christ or whatever, because he was doing so well. And then, he just didn't quite make Champions League. And I think you've been, touching on why you're not winning trophies or why you're not this and that. And I think, I don't know, I just felt a little bit weird that, when you were going into that Man City game at the end of last season and you'd really got a good chance of trying to get Champions League, and it was sort of like you'd rather lose to Man City to stop Arsenal winning the league. I don't know whether that's got something sort of like to do with it a little bit, because I felt like, it was a massive opportunity for him to get Champions League football last year. And, if he had done it, you'd have been back where you want a challenge, really. And I don't know, it's got a vibe like it's kind of like turning your nose up at it a little bit, just to sort of like save your face. And then this season,
Luke, have a look at a sorry to butt in. Have a look at a video when we were in the Champions League final and Arsenal were in the Europa League final. Have a look at their AFTV takes on. They basically asked the question: would you rather lose the Europa League and Tottenham lose, or would you rather win the Europa League and Tottenham win the Champions League? And to a man, every single one of them said lose the Europa League. So I don't think that is anything to do with it, in my opinion. Like, I just think that's just the rivalry, man. Like, those guys haven't won a Champions League. They haven't even won a Europa League, and they still would rather we didn't do it first than them actually win their first ever Europa League. So yeah, I mean, I do see your point. That can be a bad mentality, but I think the rivalry is just so ugly at this point that I think it goes both ways. And it hasn't stopped Arsenal like being historically winners, right? So I don't think it is the reason, personally. But
yeah, no, fair enough.
No, thank you very much. And Luke, I will let you go now. So thank you very much for coming on, and good luck for the rest of the season. Tell people about a bit about what you do, where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so we like a Villa fan channel on YouTube. We do like fan cams and match previews, etc., and opposition previews. So yeah, that's what we do.
Lovely. Thank you very much. All the best. As I said, good luck
All
for
right,
the rest
see
of
you
the
later,
season.
lads. Bye.
Nice one, mate. Have a good one.
Thank
Take
you.
Care.
So it did 2-1 to Aston Villa. Tell you what, Bob, I'll come to you on this one. I mean, it's an awful week. I've said it at the start, and I've said it a couple of times tonight. But I mean, in the space of 4 days, 2 losses, that's bad enough. But it's exiting 2 cup competitions and 2 really poor performances. I mean, the results are bad enough. Is it cause for concern the last 4 days?
Yeah, I think there's been cause for concern the last few months, really. Yeah, like the thing, I heard it said somewhere, I think it could have been on A View from the Lane, maybe the podcast, they were talking about it, and this was his safety net. The cups were his safety net. Now, that's not to say that he's going to be sacked or anything that he could be, but let's just say he's not, or we're not talking that yet. I think there was an element of that's what was. He could have these losses in the league. We could be sitting where we are, and people would say we're still, the semi-final League Cup, fourth round in the FA Cup with a good chance at it, and people were hanging on to that. And now he doesn't have that safety net. So if it goes badly for him now in the league, he has nothing really to fall back on. Now, in saying that, I'm delusional enough to think that we still have a good chance in the Europa League. So if that doesn't show you, it's the hope that kills you, nothing will. But
Yeah.
he's nothing to work with now. If he doesn't turn things around drastically now, I think he could be gone. I would love to go for a drink with Ange Postecoglou. I think he's good company. He comes across as like a good man, a good
He's
person.
a likable guy, isn't he?
Very likable. And I think he, at the heart, is a good person. And there's probably not enough good people in football anymore. Okay, whether there ever was or not, I don't know. So it's hard to call for him to be sacked or to lose his job, especially when he does play this. When we've seen his football at the ceiling, it is exciting to watch. But there's obviously a but. It's just not sustainable the way the team we have. And look, I think our first 11 should be right up there. I think we can compete with anybody. On our day, our ceiling is as high as anybody, but our floor is lower than it needs to be if we're to be in top four, even the top six. Like I call it kind of our standard deviation from our best to worst just is too big. It's not consistent enough. And yeah, you might be able to win a cup like that. And I think we all know that you can win a cup in consistent form, and you can get lucky draw and so on. And that's why we were all getting so excited by it. But when it comes to league, it's your bread and butter. Now, again, on the flip side, I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth, and I completely appreciate that. Like, what's our goal difference at the moment? I don't have it offhand, but it's significantly higher than those around us. So there is. I was actually listening to this piece earlier it was kind of TED talk, and it's by a guy called Rasmus Ankerson, who's involved with the owner of Brentford, and the owner of Brentford. It's worth listening to if you type it in. He went and bought SC Midtjylland in Denmark. And the whole premise is that the table doesn't lie is a bit of a myth, because it can certainly lie. And one of the biggest factor in that is the goal difference. So that's probably me clutching onto straws, maybe trying to tell myself it's not quite as bad as I think. And just the example he used is, do you remember when Newcastle had Papa Cisse and Dembele up front and they finished fifth? We finished fourth that season. But everybody around them, their goal difference was like more than 15 better than them. They had like +5 goal difference at the end of the season and finished fifth. Offered Pardew an 8-year deal, and it was kind of the beginning of the end for that Newcastle cycle. Anyway, I am digressing again. But just on that goal difference piece, I do think that there is a little bit of hope to maybe catch on to that. Maybe things aren't quite as bad, as well as the injuries. And we can't hide behind that all day. I get that. But I think you take Romero and Van de Ven, I think they're the biggest two we're missing more than anyone. We can play that high line, we can squeeze a pitch.
Agree.
But now we can't do that. The pitch gets bigger for the players that are playing, the players that are playing twice a week. We can't look beyond that. But we can also not. These problems aren't all individual problems. We can have more than one problem. It's, again, not to go back to it, but like, Levy or Anje. But like, it can be both. Like, it's not a one-way street. And that's the thing. Is Ange to blame? Yes, he is. Are injuries to blame? Yes, they are. Are Danny Levy to blame? Yes, he is. There's a bit of everything. And yes, as an entourage, I completely agree. I'm waving that Argentinian flag to get Pochettino back. I'm that guy. So, yeah, sorry, I've just been. If I see Poch's name, I get distracted. But yeah, look, it's not one thing. There's plenty wrong with us. But I am touching the straws that maybe we're not as far off as maybe the league table says.
No, thank you, Bob. I think you make some good points in there. Let's kick it off then. And before we do, let's hear from Ange Postecoglou, what he had to say post-match. And we're kind of review what he said and then get into the whole Ange debate, ENIC debate, Levy debate. I'm looking forward to this one. But here's what he had to say post-match. I thought you looked really disheartened, actually.
Well, Ange, can you give us your thoughts on that match and maybe start with the first half in particular?
Yeah, obviously, disappointing we don't progress. Yeah, it wasn't a great start. It's the last thing you want, but that sort of gave them some momentum going into that 45 minutes, and we really struggled to sort of get some control. Also had an enormous chance at 1-0 to equalise. Second half, we had to open up a little bit, which allowed them some opportunities on the counter, but at the same time, I thought we got a better grip of the game and unfortunately fell short.
And why do you think you struggled in that first half?
As I said, we obviously, when you go a goal down, it gives the opposition some momentum and some confidence into that, and we kind of struggled then to get a grip on the game. Ideally, you want to sort of try and wrestle control really early, and we didn't do that.
And you made the change at half-time, Basuma coming on. What did you say to the team at the break? Because there was more energy and intent.
Well, it was still in the game. As disappointing as the first half was, like I said, we're only 1-0 down. We'd had a big chance to make it 1-1, so we just needed to hang in there. And like I said, the second half was a lot more, more like ourselves. And second goal sort of made it a bit more difficult for us. But I always felt we were a threat going the other way, but unfortunately not enough.
Yeah.
Well, that was Ange post-match. Interesting to hear from him. Alfie, what did you make of what he said there? He wouldn't really get into the reason, or his thoughts anyway, and reasoning behind our struggles in the first half. He didn't give too much away in that interview. So what did you make of it?
Yeah, I think there's a second interview as well where he made quite a passionate defence. I think it's prompted by yet another question of what the injuries and keeps getting brought up and why you're struggling. Well, it is obvious. And you mentioned earlier, Bob, that the cups were saving him. I think there's actually three things that are saving him. I think there's the fact that we were in the cups. And secondly, the injury crisis is basically incomparable to anyone in recent history from my memory. And the fact there's not a very good manager field out there right now. There's not a great replacement options. I know Pochettino has been mentioned. Personally, I'd love him if we had to get rid of Ange Postecoglou and we had to choose.
Agree.
I'd love him to come back, but that's a separate note. But other than that, there's not a really replacement. So there's a few things that are keeping him in the job. And I do have the injury fronts. I do have a slight sympathy for him in that front. I know it's been mentioned that obviously he could have done some squad management better, but when it gets to this extent, when you get ACLs, hamstrings, knee injuries, fevers, illnesses, it is just an accumulation of things. You can put it down to the manager as much, but he's not given Mikey Moore an illness. He's not made Dragusin land funny on his knee. There is obvious issue with the hamstring injuries, but that's not been as widespread. And we could have dealt with the hamstring injuries this season, in my opinion. I'm open to admit I'm a football romanticist. I give Postecoglou a lot more time than I've given Mourinho and Conte because of the way he plays, and because the way he plays aligns with Tottenham perhaps better than any manager we've had in the last 30 years, barring Postecoglou, barring Pochettino, maybe. So there's all the ingredients there which make me think it should work, and it will. But the injuries, I'm willing to basically give some patience until the players come back from injury and there's some sharpness back in the players. If we start to see that our level is still continuously low, that's a great cause for concern, and that's where I'll start to get really worried. And I already have an understanding and acceptance from other fans who have frustrations with him because he has got his issues. He's flawed at the moment, and we're in a tough time, and I don't think he's necessarily helping the situation. But I have the patience. I'm basically patiently frustrated at the moment. I'm willing to see the players come back. It's like going into a boxing match and then fighting the first weight as a lightweight, and then having a heavyweight put in your ring with you. He's not being played the same card as everyone else at the moment. I saw someone online on Twitter recently just tweet, if Fulham, for example, even Fulham, who are, I think they're eighth, they're easily in the top 10 and they're doing a lot better than us this season. If they had 11 players out, they'd be playing their like under 19s. So any club, if you drop out the top 6, having our level of injuries, would be struggling to no end right now. So it's understandable, and I just have some patience. I do accept that he's slightly flawed at the moment, but I'm willing to ride it out. And the main reason is also who do you want in? Who do you want in to the end of the season? Is it we've got a free hit now? You may as well. Mason, we've seen Mason 3 times before as well, and we know that's not spectacular. May as well get to the end of the season, let the players come back and reassess in the summer, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alfie. But for me, the question here has to be, if Ange's sacked, what will change? And this kind of gets us into our next point in terms of, is the problem and the way the club's run is still going to be there. I think you remove Postecoglou, you remove that little bit of stubbornness, that little bit of naivety, perhaps. But I think we've seen in recent years that it isn't the manager at Tottenham. I think that the problems lie deeper. That's the saying that is generally used, and I do agree with that. So on that note, Altu, I'll come to you next. Do you feel like, I asked you a question earlier, but this in a slightly different way in terms of generally Ange's hands are more tied because this is a transfer window. I think Alfie's right, isn't he? In terms of we've been unlucky, a lot of injuries, some self-inflicted, with Ange the way we play. But we knew what we wanted and needed coming into that transfer window. But it took so long, didn't it, to get business done, and our season just petered out.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't have come to January anyway. I think it should have started from the summer, and I called it from the beginning. I actually said I said it word for word. I don't care about the league position this season. I just care about trophies, because I knew we weren't gonna. After seeing that summer window, I kind of knew what it was like. We weren't gonna break top 4. I think I'm kind of over now as well. It just feels like we're in that kind of cycle of getting top 4, get Champions League, be promised that we can now sign better players, up the wages, and then we don't really ever sign that kind of player. Even when Conte got top 4, we didn't really sign that kind of player to take you to the next level. I know we got Richarlison, we got Bissouma, who I was actually really excited about, and he's actually been a little bit disappointing, to be honest. But yeah, I digress. I kind of agree with Bob, though, in the sense that even with the players back, and this is kind of like a two-pronged answer, really. One, I don't actually ever envision a scenario anymore where we do get all of our players back. I just can't see it. I feel like we're always going to be on this kind of conveyor belt of torn hamstrings. Obviously, I've got sympathy for the freak injuries. There's nothing that can be done about that. But there was something I saw on Twitter actually the other day as well. It's like a plot chart of I don't know if you boys saw it, but it was sprint percentages in possession on one axis, sprint percentages out of possession on another axis, and kind of most clubs were kind of congregated in the middle. They kind of do a little bit of sprinting in possession, a little bit out of it. Some teams do more of it in, some teams do more of it out. And then you've got some outliers where some teams do loads of it in possession and not much of it out of possession, and vice versa. And then in the very top hand right, you had Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, who were higher percentage of sprints in possession, higher percentage of sprints out of possession. And I think, again, it goes back to that kind of extremism on Twitter. I think it's either Ange till the wheels fall off, or it's Ange sucks, get rid ASAP. Where I think, again, it's somewhere in the middle, because I think he has to bear some responsibility, at least for the injuries, the muscle injuries. Because if we're sprinting up and down like madmen in and out of possession, then that has to play a factor in a lot of the muscle injuries that we're getting. So yeah, there's that, and then lost my train of thought now. I can't remember my second prong to this answer. But yeah, so there's that part of it. But then that was it. What Bob said about getting all of our players back. I think even when we had our players back, it was definitely better, without a doubt. There was better football. The results were better as well.
But still, that Ipswich loss, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was Ipswich, there was Palace. I think we had most of our players. I think he mentioned the ceiling being high, but the floor is still quite low. There was Brighton as well, wasn't there, where we just meekly surrendered that 2-0 lead in the second half in the space of like 15, 20 minutes, whatever it was. So yeah, I'm not sold on his consistency. I'm not sure it is sustainable. But at the same time, yeah, I have to blame the board as well, because it's not like this is something new. Like, they talk about all this data-led approach and this sort of this new technology where everything's like, we're looking at all the data and all the figures and all the stats. And the easiest of things that they could have found were, this happened before at Celtic. He had a massive injury crisis, I think, in his second season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and he had another massive injury crisis in Japan with Yokohama Marinos. So you're getting this manager in, you're saying this is a good fit for Tottenham. We want you. And then you're not backing him with the amount of players, the amount of quality players that he needs. It could be argued that maybe the youth policy that or the youth strategy that we've been following is because they can probably handle the high intensity better. And maybe that's played out because Archie Gray and Bergvall seem to be handling it a little bit better. Spence seems to be handling it well, although he's obviously had a bit more time on the bench than the other players. But again, it's just like, I feel like for Ange's way to work and to work consistently, you almost need like a Man City quality squad and a Man City size squad. So when a player goes out, you've got somebody almost as good ready to come off the bench, and then things can just keep ticking over. I just don't think the way Levy sees the transfer policy, that Ange eventually was a good fit. But it kind of brings me to the point, who is a good fit for Tottenham? Like, we always talk about a good Tottenham manager fit. Who is a good fit for Tottenham anymore? We've been through them all. We've been through young project managers in Pochettino. We've been through another project manager in Ange. Well, he's kind of a mix between the two, right? Because he's a winner, so he's another one that brings in youth but also wins. And we've had two serial winners as well, who haven't been able to change the culture. And I think that's the damnedest thing, the most damning thing about me attaching the culture of the club to Daniel Levy. If the two sort of culture mentality monsters couldn't even put a dent in Tottenham Hotspur's culture, I think that says everything. And I think we're probably all here now where we're kind of a little bit disillusioned. Like, who is a good fit for Tottenham? Where do we go from here? What's next? Sure, we'll sack Ange, and I see every point. I understand every point. I understand people who want him out, and I understand people who want to stick with him a little bit longer. But yeah, if we sack him, we're back here in 18 months. It doesn't matter who the manager is. It could be a
vicious cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be the best manager, and we'll get that sort of 3-month bounce or however long it lasts, and then it will end up dipping off and dipping off and dipping off until it gets toxic again. And then Daniel Levy plays his sort of Joker card, sacks him, gets the excitement going again, has a big reset, and then all the pressure's off of him, and people say, well, let's give it another chance. And it can't continue. Yeah, sorry, I went off on a bit of a rant there, but
no, you're fine. That's all important stuff. So thank you very much. Alfie, obviously you regular on the podcast, you've been here a lot with me, and we've talked Postecoglou's future I don't know how many times. How are you feeling right now after a difficult week? Has any opinions changed?
Yeah, I'm more. I think I've been pretty pro Postecoglou since I've been on the podcast in the last few months. I mean, you touched on it there, all to sort of the fact that he's a hybrid between a winning manager and a project manager, which is, I mean, if you had to write out a Spurs manager, you'd hopefully do that. and we're currently we're waiting on a miracle, I think, with the current way we're going about operating. We're sort of hoping to land on a bit of magic, as we did with Pochettino. And there is something about Postecoglou, I think, where I know we've always gone back for the first 10 games, but they do mean something. It's a considerable stretch of time. And there's been games dotted throughout as well where he's outclassed Guardiola against Man City when they were on 4-0. He's beaten, I know Emery beat him last night, but he's beaten Emery multiple times, and he's meant to be a great tactician. So there is qualities there that give me enough hope. But the last week, as you asked, does make me more accepting of the fact that, you know what, if you really, really want him out, I can see that point of view. There's not enough substance anymore to defend him, apart from the injuries and the other things which are sort of out of his control. And you can't really argue against either. So yeah, I think I'm just, as I said a little while ago, I'm sort of accepting of the adverse reaction to him at the moment. I'd like to see some more unity, but you can't really have unity when the whole squad seems short of confidence and the results are so topsy-turvy. So I understand that. But I'm personally willing to give him 10 of the season. There's no better alternative. And I think I've just seen a minute ago that he expects at least Udogie, Vicario, and Maddison to be at least within the squad for the United game. So you'd hope by March 5th, March 6th that we're going to have a near enough full strength team, or he's going to have some of the players he didn't have previously available now. In which case, I'm looking forward to judging the last 2 months of the season and seeing from there, because I'm reluctant, as we all are, to go for another 18-month cycle. It would really take it a lot out of me as a Spurs fan to see Postecoglou, someone who I really liked, taking out the role for a lot of the stuff I think's perhaps been under investment, and a lack of backing for a manager again that I've had a lot of high hopes for. So I have to wait and see now, but I'm really, really hoping that the last 2-3 months of the season are outstanding. We start to turn it around. That would be really, really promising. And I think Ange is a promising manager that he could, if he starts to turn it around, then who knows how we'll go up from there if we invest properly in the summer. But that's a huge if, obviously.
Indeed, a huge if. We'll have to see. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I want nothing more than him to succeed at Spurs. He's the manager right now. Likeable guy. I'd love it to work out, prove people wrong. There's a lot of rival fans going, laughing at him and going, he said he's going to win a trophy in his second season. He's not going to do it. Having said that, I think if we don't, which looks highly likely that we won't win a trophy this season, under Postecoglou, I don't think that damages his reputation. I think it just damages ours further. Because people go, as Altu mentioned it earlier, Conte, Mourinho, and all these managers that have won elsewhere, everywhere, but don't win at Spurs. It just damages our reputation even more. But Bob, how do you feel about Postecoglou? You mentioned him being a nice guy earlier. You want to go for a drink with him on the football side, though? Do you think the club should be sticking with him for a little bit longer?
Yeah, I'm probably similar to Alfie on this. Maybe we all are kind of in similar positions. I really feel like I'd love it to work for him. And I was backing him up until, I would say, the Forest game over Christmas was when I started to kind of maybe think the gig was up, or it just wasn't going to work out. And I think if it was any other manager, he probably would have been sacked by now. But there's something, Alfie, I know you touched upon a few points, and after you did as well. We mentioned the Cups injuries, and probably Levy wanting to save his own skin. If he sacks him, he's nowhere to go. And at the moment, Ange is probably taking. Levy's obviously getting. You can hear it in the crowd. They've been great with singing for Levy out, but there's still, Ange is acting as somewhat of a shield for Levy at the moment, and I think Levy knows that. So I think he's getting more time than any other manager. Yeah, it's only worth sacking over if somebody to bring in straight away. I can't deal with another Mason interim charge. And I personally, I don't get where football's gone in many places at the moment. But like, what's stopping us going to a manager and getting him mid-season? Like, why doesn't that happen anymore? I don't understand. Again, I'm kind of going back to the past a bit too much tonight, but like even 5-6 years ago, like we went in. Did we take Redknapp from Portsmouth? I know that was over 5-6 years ago, but we just went in, sacked Ramos. Redknapp was in the following day. I think Bolton was his first game. Like we were able to just go and get managers mid-season. We're a big enough club. We are a big club. I know we can take stick about it that we're not, or we're this or we're that, and we get battered and all that. But like Iriola, I don't care what people say. Bournemouth are fine at the moment, absolutely. But Spurs is a bigger job than Bournemouth. And for Spurs not to be able to go in and get Iriola out of Bournemouth mid-season, like what's going to happen? Bournemouth, best case scenario for them, they finish. They're not finished Champions League. They'll finish Europa League. Okay, best case scenario. Is he hanging around for Bournemouth in the Europa League or Spurs next season? He's coming to Spurs next season. And I'd say the same whether it was Spurs, Villa, that lot down the road, anyone else of a stature. We should be able to go in and get him straight away. Same with Marco Silva from Fulham, whether you want him or not. I'm just throwing names. Thomas Frank from Brentford. These are managers who have been in for this. It's only worth getting Postecoglou. You're only as good as the replacement. And if we have a replacement ready to go, I probably would pull the trigger. But if we don't, what's the point? I know I called Pochettino earlier on. Again, I don't know. I as far as I know from what you hear, the contract situation is difficult with the US. I think he's pretty tied down there. But like, get him out of there. We all know it's possible to break contracts in football. It's the oldest story in the book. Players throwing their toys out of the pram, getting out of the contract. You can get out of a contract if you want to do something enough. And I just don't understand how we can't go in and get the manager we want rather than sacking Postecoglou and then being in a state of perjury like we were in the Stellini, Mason, strange era we found ourselves in this time 2 years ago.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's an interesting point you make. Bob, I know you have to jump in just a second. So before you do, can you give us your thoughts on just the current situation at Spurs in terms of Levy, Inick, where you stand with both of them?
Yeah, I mean, ideally I want them gone. But again, Altu, you may not want me to say this, but again, it's similar to the management position. It's only worth getting them out if we have somebody better coming in. Like, United fans, we've seen them twerk for the Glazers out over the last 15 years. I don't think Ratcliffe's so much better. And I know he's tried to, and he's brought in Brailsford and all this type of thing, but like I don't think he's done a better job than the Glazers. And yeah, I want Daniel Levy gone, but I only want Daniel Levy gone. And how many times we saw with Everton? Everton were almost driven into the ground. Their fans wanted new owners. They brought Mashiri in, and it really is better the devil, sometimes. Now, we do have a devil sitting up there at the moment, but we need to know that whoever is coming into the club isn't going to run the club into the ground from a financial point of view. And I'm not saying be as tight as Levy is at the moment, but there is, and one thing Levy says, and it drives me mad when I hear him say it, but there is an element of truth in it. And I think, Altu, you probably know what I'm about to say here soon, is when he calls himself a custodian of the club, okay? Like, it is better the devil sometimes, but we do need him out, but only if it's a case that we have a better owner ready to come in. And again, I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. I'm sounding like Jamie Redknapp at the moment, sitting on the fence. But we do need to know who's coming into our club and make sure that they are the right fit and that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, I think that you're spot on with that. It's got to get the balance right. What's best for the club. Bob, thank you very much for coming on for your debut. Very solid debut, if I may say so. Where can people find you across social media?
I'm just a bit of a fiend for Twitter, to be honest, or X. I need to spend less time rather than having my head on the phone. It's Bob_Spurs. You can find me there. Yeah, I can be pretty reactionary, but I try not to be.
Can't we all be sometimes? I mean, Twitter, that's the place for reactionary, that's for sure. Thanks so much for coming on, Bob. All the best.
Thanks, Harry. Nice to meet you guys. All the best. See you.
Spurs.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, mate.
See you.
Yeah, let's continue with the Levy Enoch discussion. Altu, I'll come to you. Talk to people a little bit about, you and what Change for Spurs are just trying to do. Not we get onto United a bit later, but what the point of Change for Tottenham is, and why you feel this way towards the board and the ownership.
Yeah, so Change for Spurs started basically among friends. So there are a few of us who know each other from match days. There are a few of us who have connected and known each other on Twitter for a few years, and yeah, we all sort of ended up meeting on a match day in group chats on WhatsApp, and the founder Lyndon had this really sort of great idea for Change for Spurs. I think it was around 2 years ago, maybe more. And yeah, he kind of just gauged opinion on whether sort of we'd all be up for helping out. So yeah, I mean, it's a really sort of diverse group of fans, just like your everyday fan. There's season ticket holders, members. There's males, females. There's different age groups. So yeah, we're all just sort of like-minded fans who just love our club and just think that our club could do better within its capabilities, right? Within its financial capabilities. I think there's a misconception, I think, from some on Twitter who think that people who criticize the board are doing it from a kind of throwing their toys out of the pram perspective, where we haven't looked at the numbers, we haven't thought it through. We're just kind of reactionary after every loss, and that's not the case. We've got some really good people in the group, and what we're trying to do is just unite the fan base, people who are of the same thought, where they're sick of the way the club is being run. They're sick of, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about matters on the pitch. For us, mostly it's matters on the pitch, but it's been run badly from a much bigger perspective. So some people might be annoyed, very rightly so, about the senior concessions or the price rises that don't match the product on the pitch. Some people are annoyed with the product on the pitch, and that's their main concern. So we kind of wanted to create a movement that everybody can be a part of, sort of like the broad, like the 80-20, right, of the fan base. So we know there's going to be sort of like fringe lunatics on like the 10% either side, who we kind of like, we know we're not going to get through to the people who will forever back Daniel Levy. He could double the price of season tickets next year and they'd still sort of defend it. And then obviously on the other side, you've got kind of the extreme sort of Levy out who won't debate and will sort of will be abusive, and that goes for both sides, by the way. I've seen so many sort of Levy supporters hurl abuse as well, and we kind of want to avoid that, and we kind of want to make it an environment that's peaceful, but is sort of hungry for change. And like I said, it's for everybody. It's for not, I say everybody, I know I just said the 10% who will never kind of think like us, but it's for the majority of reasonable fans, I think, who are tired of the way the club has been run, who kind of know that we could be doing more within our financial capabilities, and we could be getting treated better as fans as well in terms of pricing and the product we're seeing on the pitch. So yeah, we've set up a few initiatives. So we've got United coming up. We had a banner at the previous game that you might have seen all across the media, and yeah, we all kind of pull our own weight. So I do stuff on the website. I do some sort of design stuff for social media, and then you've got other people who run the social media, and then you've got other people who look into the finances. So it's a really good group of people who are really passionate about Tottenham and want the best for Tottenham and its fans. And if people want to join in that, we're more than welcoming to anybody who and even ideas as well. We're more than welcoming for any ideas on initiatives, and it's only grown since that 2-year period.
That's credit to all your hard work, so well done for that. And what I like is you don't necessarily have to want Ely can leave you out, even if you're maybe feel neutral. I mean, I think I fairly have in the past, maybe changed it a little bit recently, but it's about challenging, isn't it? The owners of what the club are doing, what they're doing with our money, and how they they treat us as kind of customers. So I think that it's a movement for all, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shame I wasn't able to answer Bob's question before he left, but he mentioned is the goal to get rid of Levy. And the beauty of Change for Spurs is even among us there are different thoughts as well. So for me, I think my ideal scenario is that Levy's fingerprints are as far away from this club as possible, because I do feel like the culture and the mentality that he has kind of instilled in this club is going to be really, really hard to wash away with him there in a capacity, unless that capacity is him completely removing himself from the football side of things. And he has claimed to have done that in the past, but I think it's very obvious from our transfer policies and the kind of players that we sign that it's got his fingerprints all over it. That's a Levy transfer policy. So yeah, I mean, I'd be happy with what Bob suggested. For example, if Levy was to change, he was to remove himself from the equation, maybe focus on commercial, because we know he's fantastic at that. I don't think anybody has any doubts about that. And if he just let somebody drive in, maybe another investor to drive the football side of it, I'd be happy with that. My ideal scenario would be him gone. I don't have the trust in him. I've felt Levy out since the January Redknapp window, and I do totally understand the balance in between that. So we've had the background of the stadium, but I think he's shown his hand for like way too many times now. I don't think success is his biggest motivator, even within reason. Again, I'm saying I don't want to spend like City. I just want to be competitive and try.
It's about ambition, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're gonna do everything we can possible. Whether that means Levy goes and sells up, I know that's a really hard ask. I know that might not even be realistic, but if we can keep the pressure cooker turned up on him, and he can start treating us better as fans, and he can start showing some ambition and giving us a better product on the pitch, I think that will at least go some way to being a success metric. Yeah.
Would you take new owners if it meant that Daniel Levy was still here as chairman? Because I want to get mainly your thoughts on this. But for me, I don't get me wrong. I think they both have their faults, but I feel like it's the ownership for me. It's the way that we recruit, invest, and just generally treat. There's the business first. And kind of football second, that profit over glory. I think that's installed from ENIC. However, I think you mentioned it there. I think you're spot on in terms of, in particular, I think managerial appointments, sackings, mentality, just different things. Maybe that lack of knowledge when it comes to football and always getting involved. That is on Levy's. I think it's both. But if you had to, I tell you what, I'll change the question slightly if you don't mind. If you could only get rid of one, ENIC or Levy, what would it be?
Honestly, I think I'd say Levy. I genuinely would say Levy, because I honestly believe, and I could be wrong here, by the way, maybe the transfer policy is ENIC's, but I've always got the thought they don't care about the football. They're just kind of ENIC or ENIC.
You do get that impression, don't you?
Yeah, they've installed Daniel Levy. You run the football side how you see fit and make us a bunch of money, and he's doing it that way. So yeah, for me, I think I'd rather Levy went and a different football man came in, because I think it's such an obvious statistic as well when you look at like the wages and the correlation with success, and how all the trophy winners over the last sort of 20 years have had much higher wage bills than we have. And it's not that all of them are making more revenue than us. We're making more revenue than Chelsea. We've made more revenue than Arsenal have over the last 4 or 5 years. It's only this year they've made more revenue than us. And he hasn't changed the policy to suit. So I do think it's him, but I'm open to me being wrong. It could be someone from ENIC Tail was saying, hey, Daniel, only sign players on 100 grand a week or less, no more than that. And just shotgun it on loads of different players rather than quality over quantity. So yeah, if Levy's the man responsible for that, yeah, I'd rather get rid of him, and I feel like he is.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you. Before we wrap up, Alfie, how do you feel about the ownership, the way this club being run? Where's the blame for our current situation lie for you?
Yeah, is extremely frustrating. I think I share the frustrations of most fans. A lot of them would be alleviated if we paid cheaper prices. If there was a sort of acceptance that I think it all stems from. I know you mentioned Redknapp there, and obviously I wasn't as football conscious back then, due to my age. But the first one for me is Pochettino. When we got rid of him, I mean, even now we're showing more patience to Postecoglou than we were to Pochettino, and I was just surprised the minute that happened, and ever since then, I think it's just been a bit of a bit of just a catalogue of errors, possibly. I was surprised when we got Mourinho in. I think
Yeah.
Levy is admitted that was sort of a dream he'd always had, to have a big manager like Mourinho and appoint him. And I think it was the wrong move. Well, it clearly was, from history showing it, but I think he even accepts that now. It was the wrong move, but the last 5 years just haven't been up to par, and they haven't been to the real kickers. Are the two main things, in my opinion, are the revenue in correlation to what we see in the pitch, and the ticket prices we pay on to what we see in the pitch. If you were paying half the ticket prices, the the anger and the movement against Levy wouldn't be as strong. I guarantee you that. And if we were bringing in half as much money, there'd be hardly as much anger as well. But the fact that we each year upon year we see the revenue figures come out and it's seventh highest in Europe, and then you're like, we're not even seventh in the Premier League, and it does start to worry you. And yeah, it's getting to the point now where the fans need to see something step up. We're seeing it a little bit. We saw a bit with Solanke, and we saw a bit with Tell this window. You're thinking, okay, we've got the nuggets we need. We need these players in. And if that was on a more regular basis, you'd start to have more faith. But the last 4 years, I think, has shot the relationship between the fans and the board. And even Levy himself, he's been honest and open before, saying he's not an open person. He's quite a reserved figure. But I think it's now the time for him to come out and speak. There's so much sort of aggression towards him, and sort of I'd say the Levy out brigade against him has probably been the stock of that is higher than ever, probably. So I think that now is the time to talk. There's so many things previously that need transparency on, even the furlough scheme, the senior scheme, and the decision to sack certain managers, and the decision to bring certain managers in. I know we have these fan forums, but I'd love to see a BBC interview of him. I'd love to see an honest, open interview of him, and perhaps the fans would have more sympathy. I don't know, because we all don't know Levy's mind and how he works. And I think perhaps if we saw some more clarity, we'd have more understanding of the situation and judge it from there. But when he doesn't do that, I can see how he opens himself up for criticism, and his decisions in the last few years haven't helped that at all. So it is just frustrating to see, especially with the figures of the revenue only going higher, and the wages seemingly only going lower. It's only adding to this sort of this negative feel around the club that deserves to be changed for the fans. The fans deserve this above everything else, to have something change at the club, I think.
Yes, interesting. Any final comments on the ownership or anything before we wrap up?
No, if you don't mind, Harry, I'd just like to invite everybody who is going to the game against United to join us for the Change for Spurs march that we're doing. So we're starting at the crossroads of Lordship Lane and the High Road, and that's at 2:45 p.m. So you'll see a few of us there. So yeah, just gather round, and at 3 o'clock we'll start our march to the stadium. Bring flags if you've got them, bring scarves, banners, whatever you want. Keep it peaceful, keep it respectful. We're just gonna make our voices heard. Gonna go to the stadium, and then obviously watch the game, get behind the boys. Hope we pick up a win. And then the plan is after the game to stage a sit-in in the South Stand in protest as well, where we can basically let the board hear our voices and make our presence known, essentially, that we want change. So yeah, if you're up for that, I invite you down. Everybody's welcome. Keep it peaceful, keep it respectful, and yeah, let's get some change if we can.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much. That kind of wraps us up nicely. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to Aston Villa fan and YouTuber Luke Robinson for coming early. He's beat himself, quite a big platform, and I've done work with him before, so I want to thank him for taking the time to come on. Obviously, good circumstances for him. I want to thank Bob on his debut, and I want to thank both of you too. So let's go through. We can find you on social media. Alfie Nicholson, thank you so much for coming back on. It's pretty much a regular now, which is, fills me with joy because you always smash it when you come on here. Where can people find you across the socials?
Thank you, first of all. And yeah, it's just Alfie Nicholson as below on Twitter for Spurs opinions and just my work. And then I'm a student journalist as well. So if you want to follow my stuff on TikTok, that's Alfie Nicholson Journalism, and the same handle on Instagram as well. And that's more graphic based stuff. I've done stuff for some Tottenham players, match graphics and stuff. So if you want to look out for that, yeah, on Instagram as well.
Yeah, it's all quality stuff, so make sure
Awesome.
to check it out. Thank you very much, Alfie. Also, a massive thank you to Altu on his debut representing change for Spurs. I thought spoke really well, and it's a growing movement as well. You can see why when you have him come here talk about the movement, and it is inclusive, accessible for all. And a lot of us, wherever you feel about the ownership, etc., we want to see some form of change. We want to see that ambition to compete and to just ultimately, see Spurs do well. And I think this is what this movement's about. That's why I'm proud to support it anyway. So where can people find you?
Thank you, Harry.
Across social media, and talk to people as much detail as you like about Change for Spurs and any future plans or how people can help.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all self-funded. So we have had so many people reach out to us to sort of offer donations and whatnot, but we kind of want to keep it self-funded, at least at the moment, because I think when you start taking or asking for donations from people, it kind of like opens up a whole can of worms, which we kind of really want to show that we are doing this off of our own back, and this is a movement, by the fans. We're not trying to we're doing this off of our own back with good intentions, essentially. But yeah, you can find out more. Please follow at Change for Spurs on Twitter, and you can find out more information about the details on the protest as well for the one against United and every other initiative that we've got planned going forward as well. You can catch that by following Change for Spurs. And myself, I am on at Altu Cop. So it's ALTU and then KOP. But yeah, it's been awesome talking to you as well, Alfie. Top man. So yeah, hopefully come on you Spurs on Saturday or Sunday, sorry.
Yeah, come on you Spurs, absolutely.
Yeah. Give us something to smile about.
Well, yeah, exactly. You need a result as well. So fingers crossed. Hopefully the weather's all right as well, or your protest and that. But thank you to everyone who's tuned in. Really appreciate it. Obviously tough times for the club at the moment, so appreciate you all tuning in as always. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're listening on YouTube, please do like, subscribe, and turn the notifications bell on. If you're listening via audio, your typical podcast platforms, wherever you get your podcasts, don't forget to drop us a follow and a 5-star review. But yeah, we didn't get time to get onto United preview, so we'll do a separate United preview show later on the week, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I'll make it happen, don't worry. But for now, a massive come on you Spurs.